Still on This Morning on ITV, your flagship program of choice, and cruising on the wing of nationalism and you, we are welcome to the second discussion segment of the program. I am Ebenezer Oyetakin, your host, and with me to x-ray the issue of minimum wage, the implementations, how far. That is what we will take a look at this morning, and with me to do this is Barrister Ataguba Aboje, a legal practitioner, a public notary, and an arbitrator. Barrister Aboje, nationalism and you.
It is my duty and responsibility to build this nation. Thank you, Ebenezer, for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
This is over 2 years that the president have assented to the minimum wage bill, act, that approved 30,000 naira as the Nigerian minimum wage. What has been the degrees of implementation from state to state? We know the federal government has been implementing.
Well, as at the time the president signed this bill into law, that was 2 years ago in 2019, it was a laudable piece of legislation which was supposed to enhance the living, as it were, of employees. You are well aware that the Minimum Wage Act applies to civil servants and employees in private establishments, and that was supposed to raise their minimum take home, which was as at then was 18,000. It stood at 18,000 for a very long time, and it was taken to 30,000. And after that was done, it was shocking to me. I was hoping that everybody was going to get on board, the state governments was going to get on board to ensure that this will, they implement the act to help, workers. But unfortunately, it took quite a while for most states to get on board. And if you listen to the labor union leader, Mr. Ayuba, over the weekend, he still mentioned that there were still 7 states that were yet to implement the national minimum wage. And that tells you how this act has been implemented. Several states, quite shockingly for me, even those states that were, the oil producing states, whose overall income was way more than so many states. It took quite a long, it took so long for them to even get themselves on board. And you can see for right now, about 7 of them, you still have Cross River, that's an oil producing state, not implementing the act. So it's it's a very sad state of affairs for me, because while they were foot dragging, right, inflation overran the laudable intention of that act. Because right now, 30,000 is nothing. You can't even take the worker home. A bag of rice right now that we are talking is about 30,000. So what benefit is the national minimum wage right now? Now, for the states who are yet to implement, by the time they implement it, it's of no use. And don't forget that the national minimum wage is subject to statutory deductions, which even means that those who are taking 30,000 naira don't even go home with 30,000, because there are deductions, pension deductions, and some other statutory deductions that will be taken from that. So, unfortunately, that has not really helped the situation of labor in the country. And it's a sad one, because if you look across board, you look at countries who are ordinarily we are at par with, you look at Mexico, you look at I think India and some other countries, you see that the national minimum wage for those countries far outpace our country. And 30,000 naira, let's put it in perspective. 30,000 naira, if you convert it to dollars, today you're talking about maybe
far less than $100.
Far less, about $70. It's about $70. So what can that do for anybody? And yet we still have state governments who are foot dragging. And don't forget that the national minimum wage is an act, and anyone who's not implementing it is breaching the law, is committing an offense.
Now, taking it from there, statistics before now, for this latest revelation that about 7 states are not implementing yet, shows that Northwest took the lead in the implementation. And if you look at it, the Northwest are not viable states that are receiving the oil back, this thing, and the rest of it. When you take arithmetic of what they receive from governments, that is from the treasury and things of that nature, compared to the South, what do you think are the impediments? Why are the implementations not carried out uniformly by the state governments?
Now, I think there's a fundamental issue here, which for me will always go back to the Constitution, because the national minimum wage is an item under the exclusive legislative list, whereby the federal government is able to legislate for the entire nation, that to set a minimum wage. Right. So for me, I think that is wrong, because we are a federation, and states should be allowed to, grow their economy or move themselves according to the pace wherein they can move themselves. Now, you have a situation where states, all the states, they don't earn the same amount. Even from their internal generated revenue, they don't earn the same. Even what they get from the federal government is not the same. So sometimes you can cut some slack for states who were unable to implement, because you say, okay, this state is not earning as much as this state, and if he looks at the overall income that it has, he may not be able to implement it like the other states. So that in itself, for me, is a fundamental flaw which you can trace back to how we're implementing our constitution. As a federation, we're operating the federal system. States should be able to move according to their pace, not to be, pulled along by the federal government at the center, because the federal government at the center is making decisions which some states are not able to implement, right? But then that is on one side. On the other side, you have a situation where we have, states who are producing, the oil producing states. Some of them got on board quite late. You have, right now we have, I think, Anambra has not implemented, Imo has not implemented, Abia has not implemented, Cross River has not implemented, Zamfara has not implemented, Kogi State has not implemented, Benue has not implemented. Now, if you look at these states now, you see that there are oil producing states that have not implemented. Why? For me, I think it's because of parochial interest. They don't have the interest of the people at heart. Because if they do, I think what they are receiving is sufficient to give employees that minimum wage. The politicians are selfish.
Now, taking it from there, let us examine it from the two angles that you have just itemized. The areas of the exclusivity of the the minimum wage being from the table of the federal government.
Yes.
We are not the only country in this practice. Many countries are in this practice. I remember Brazil. Brazil, it presupposes that this is the benchmark of what you can go in the payment of in what is described as minimum wage.
Yes.
You must not pay lesser than this, but you can pay higher than this.
That, yes.
Some states in Northwest even pay more than the 30,000 minimum wage, yes, and things of that nature. That being that, don't you think that many Nigerians will disagree with you that it is not possible for federal government, that it is a constitutional lacuna for the federal government to legislate this exclusive legislation and things of that nature?
Now, well, the point I'm trying to make is, I'm not saying that the minimum wage is wrong. That's not what I'm saying. Ordinarily, workers should be able to earn even more than that. Okay. But what I'm saying is that the driving force should not be the central government. The central government on its own can legislate for Abuja, the federal capital, and impose a minimum wage in Abuja, while the states will look at its own strength and look at its own capability and now legislate for itself. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because the way our system is structured, we are structured as a federal system. And what that means is that the sub-units,
national government,
yes, national governments, are independent. And we're talking about labor. Labor is service, is providing service within a jurisdiction. And if service is being carried out within a jurisdiction, you should expect that the government of that jurisdiction should be able to say this is how you are supposed to, perform or be remunerated for the services that you are carrying out, on the basis that we are a federal government. I mean, we are a federal system. So if we're a federal system, then the states should be given that autonomy to legislate for matters like minimum wage, not the federal government. And that's why we had this issue. Because don't forget that it's not just a legal issue. It's a political issue, it's a social issue. And because the federal government on its own, without proper consultation, if you remember, several states were against this because there was no proper consultation with them.
Now, taking it from there, don't you think that many Nigerians have opined that the reasons why many states cannot implement the minimum wage, the 30,000 minimum wage, is because the states are preponderantly reliant on the shared money from the federal purse, rather than being creative to industrialize their state and things of that nature? Do you share this view?
Yeah, I do share this view. Now, everybody coming to Abuja to, as it were, take the handouts in itself is impoverishing the system. Why do I say this? Now, if every state is allowed, as it were, to develop its own resources, and at the end of the day pay a percentage, like a tax on it to the central government, I think that will help the states. But because our Minerals Act says if you find any mineral, crude, whatever you find, gold, whatever you find, the moment you find that on your land, it belongs to the federal government. And it is only when the federal government decides to, maximize that resources, that is when you'll be entitled to, to even get something out of it. But if it's reversed in such a way that once you find this mineral, go ahead, exploit it. But at the end of the day, you're going to pay a tax or a levy to the central government. That in itself will spur individuals to put their funds and resources into developing these minerals, as it were. And at the end of the day, the internally generated revenue for each state will grow. And states will develop that way. Employment, jobs will be created. But at the end of the day, the central government, the federal government, takes it upon itself to now, handle these things. And it cannot do it. We have seen it. Look at that, the case of Zamfara. Gold was discovered. At the end of the day, the federal government it's not able to really maximize, mining that a resource. Now you have bandits, you have all manner of charlatans who have taken over that place, and they are illegally mining it and depriving the nation state of these resources. But if it's the other way around, if I find it on my land, go ahead, develop it, pay some money, right? So the fact that some states are unable to pay this national minimum wage, quite clearly, is as a result of the fact that they are over-reliant on the central government. And the central government is over-reliant on getting oil from the South states.
Now let us take a look at the issue you raised concerning Zamfara State. that gold has been massively mined. At whose instance? Is it at the instance of the state government or the instance of the federal government that the gold has been massively mined by individuals? And it appears that the mining has not been of benefit to the federal government or the collective of the federation. Instead, it created, what do you call it? It created the bandits and things of that nature. Organized crime took over the state. For it to be doused, the federal government has to put a stop to it and things of that nature. If you are accusing the federal government of not allowing the state to harvest or mine the minerals that are in their areas and things of that nature, how do we arrive at that, what do you call it, contradictions in Zamfara State?
Now, the point I'm trying to make is, because the federal government's resources are limited, right? It cannot, within record time, maximize these resources or mine them properly. Now, that leaves people who are perching around. Gold is here. The federal government's presence is not really, pervasive around. It's not taking control of this. At the end of the day, organized crime took over this scenario. So, the point I'm trying to make is, if people are allowed, right, to deal with the minerals on their land, if I find gold on my land, all I need to do is to ensure that, right, follow the necessary processes, get the licenses, now ensure that I'm able to put monies or get people who are able to mine these minerals in such a way that it's transparent, it's not opaque. The government is able to follow what is going on. And at the end of the day, when it's sold, monies are paid back to the government, paid back to government coffers. But because the federal government, the bureaucracy, before they're able to move anything or do anything, it takes years. People are hungry. They know there's gold here. What do you expect them to do? That has led to a state right now, in quote, Zamfara is a jungle. Because now it's those who have the weapons, the brutes, the killers, the terrorists. They are the ones that have taken over the situation over there. Because there is that disconnect between what is being generated and what the people see. But if the people are the ones maximizing it and benefiting from it, now when we look at the situation in the United States and all that, and in some other parts of the world, if someone finds oil on his property in the United States, it's his oil. He's going to mine it and pay to the government.
Okay. Now, taking it from there, take a look at the Nigerian economy as we have it today. The minimum wage of 30,000 naira, which the reality of inflation seems to have swallowed.
Yeah.
Do you think the Nigerian Labour Congress, the Nigerian Trade Union Congress, and all other affiliate organizations, they are playing proactive role, the necessary role in ensuring that instead of focusing on payment of salary, they are not paying salary, they approve this thing and the rest of it? Don't you think they are not proactive enough in engaging government to create a larger cake that can make Nigerians to have a minimum wage of 100,000? Because honestly, in reality, I think about everybody the way I spend.
Yeah.
And I think the people in the government too should think about people the way they spend and that kind of a thing. If you take it into consideration that in that direction, you will realize that a minimum wage of 100,000 is not too much for Nigerians, but the economy has not been expanded the way it can accommodate it. Many says Nigeria economy ought not to be lesser than $1 trillion in GDP and the rest of it. Your take in this? Are the labor doing the right thing? Are they doing the right engagement of the system?
Sir Ebenezer, you have raised, you have touched on something very vital here. Now, you have said you believe that the national minimum wage should be 100,000. Now, let me give you an example. Between the people and those in government, a sitting senator, the last time I checked, receives a salary of about 29 million on a monthly basis. If you do the maths, it's about 350 something million annually as a salary.
They will tell you it is not salary, that it is allowances and they're sitting.
Everything they take is about 300 something million annually. Now, do a division of 350 million by the 30,000 that, if you do 30,000 minimum wage, right, annually, you're talking about 350 or 360,000 per annum. Now, if you do the math, divide what the senator is getting with what the Nigerian worker is getting. Do you know how many years it will take the Nigerian worker to get 350 million naira? In his lifetime, he will never be able to work for it. That's nearly about 900 and something years for him to earn what a sitting senator will earn in a year. That is gross injustice in the system. These are people that are elected by the people. The Nigerian worker cannot earn that money in his lifetime. Even 10 times his lifetime, he cannot earn it. But a sitting senator is taking that amount of money.
And they are even still saying that it is not enough.
They are saying it's not enough. And they are not even sitting as per what the Constitution says. They are sitting. They don't sit the amount of time they're supposed to sit. They don't even sit. They'll tell you COVID, but they are not sitting.
Many Nigerians have said that the disparity, the outrageous disparity between the political class payment remunerations, the political class remunerations and the workers' remunerations. Take a look at universities, lecturer, teachers, and things of that nature. Teachers receive much more salaries in a country like Germany and things of that nature. So this Nigerians opine that it is because of the disparity, outrageous disparity between the remuneration of political class and the workers that is creating the unnecessary inflation that is swallowing up the money of the workers, because it appears that we are not patronizing the same market. Your take on this?
See, it is outrageous. It is outrageous for the political class to be earning such astronomical amounts, and yet the ordinary worker is stagnated for years and not even collecting the minimum wage that has been given by law. It is outrageous, sir. You mentioned that of the professor. A city senator's salary can pay over 70 professors. The salary of a professor is how much? About 400,000 naira. One senator can pay over 70 professors in a month. And yet the consciousness of the people, we have not realized that what we have right now is unsustainable. We cannot continue in this realm of injustice. Clear and flagrant injustice. We can't continue.
Going forward, the Trade Union Congress particularly, which deals with industrial segment of society, of the labor force of a nation and things of that nature, the Nigeria Labour Congress, why are they not focusing on getting the government to create a robust economy that can accommodate Nigerians to address the issues and questions of poverty effectively?
Now the thing is,
why are they contented on pouring on the street? They didn't pay salary. Pouring on the street, they pay salary, and you pour out of the street. Another cycle, somebody said it is a cycle of mindness. You protest today, you go back, you protest tomorrow.
So let me tell you why.
So,
let me tell you why. The Labour Congress, the various unions,
yes,
they don't have constitutional powers.
It is not about constitutional power. It is a persuasive power.
Yes, ma'am, let me explain.
They have persuasive power?
Just in law, we say it's persuasive when it's not binding. Now, when you say it's persuasive, that means it's not binding. They're just a pressure group, right? So they don't really have the wherewithal to enforce these ideal situations for workers in the country. They really don't have that. But let me go quickly back to the National Minimum Wage Act. It provides some certain remedies, which I think that Nigerians should be aware of. Now, where a worker, don't forget that the National Minimum Wage, since it was passed, every Nigerian worker, though there are some workers that are exempted, but every worker has a right to that minimum wage. So if you are an employee and you're not being paid that amount of money, you have a right under the Act to seek redress in court. The Act gives every worker the right to approach a court. So, and it also gives unions the right to go to court to seek redress on behalf of the employees that they represent. So, the fact that the labor unions are always on the street, I think they are also missing it. They can, as a group, collective group, institute an action in court to implement the national minimum wage and enforce it. Because once you have the judgment, you can, as a matter of law, deduct that sum from whichever state is refusing to pay that money from the national coffers. So if you have the judgment saying that IMO is not implementing, Zafara is not implementing, and workers, the union in that state, implement an action before the National Industrial Court on this issue, and they get judgment, they will deduct that money from source by reason of enforcement. But most times, the workers are so laid back, they are afraid of repercussions, they are afraid of what the governors and all those in power will do to them. At the end of the day, they are not able to even push what they are entitled to. So I think the employees themselves, they need to wake up.
Now again, we talked about mining sectors, the restructuring of the federation in order to engender fiscal, federalism, fiscal federalism.
Yeah.
The mining sector coming under federal government exclusive right, which includes petroleum, gold, and solid minerals and what have you. Let's take that apart. Are the state doing enough in the areas of creating cottage industries, manufacturing industries? This, the federal government is not precluding them from doing, and in engaging the soil, the agricultural sectors, to maximize productivity and even dwarf whatever they are collecting from the federal centers. Are the state doing enough? The state governors.
Unfortunately, in my humble view, the states are not doing enough, because the states, you mentioned agriculture. There are so many countries that are reliant on agro produce and all that, and they are doing very well. But like I say, there's a psyche that's pervasive in our system. We are so reliant on the monthly allocations. We are so reliant on it. It feels as if the state governments are not thinking outside the box. Everybody wants to just come to Abuja to collect money. The oil money. That's what everybody is thinking about. You see states that have arable lands, fertile lands, and they're not doing anything about it. Look at Edo State. Edo State is one of the states that if you travel through Edo State, you will see pineapple all over the place. And in Edo State, right now, there's no industry. I'm not aware of any industry that is maximizing that fruit of the land. You will see pineapples, some of them will rot on the roadside. There is no mechanism, there is nothing to preserve these products, nothing to turn them into, to additional value, turn them into fruit juice, added value. There's nothing. And that's why the youths, everybody wants to live. Nobody wants to go to the land. Because even if you produce, you're not getting anything out of it.
So, going forward, what should we do to maximize productivity that can enable not only the federal government but the states to refocus based on the reality that this 30,000 has been swallowed up? Even when some state has not acceded to paying it, it has been swallowed up. We can't even express how much it has been swallowed up by inflation. So therefore, how can we, both the federal and state government, how can they and the labor force target a minimum of $1 trillion GDP as a nation? Because if we arrive there, then automatically our minimum wage, we benefit from it. And
well, I think for us to do that, we need to first of all diversify the economy. This is a broken record. Everybody has been saying diversify, diversify. We have been saying it, but we have been unable to implement it. And for me, as a legal practitioner, I always find that our ground norm, the principal law of the land, which is the Constitution, is a faulty piece of legislation, as it were. We need to look at that legislation.
Many people will tell you that if you implement even the current Constitution to the degrees of 50% of its face value solemnly, that we will get the kind of Nigeria, a better result.
Well, now the thing is,
so is it about Constitution or about our attitude?
The Constitution itself engenders attitude. Now, because of the way we're not running a true federal system. And because of that, the sub-nationals and the sub-federating units are swallowed up. Swallowed up in the sense that the federal government seems to be the driving force in how the economy is run, which should not be. States like Lagos State on their own, they can run without the federal government.
But they have been running.
Yes.
That is why I'm saying.
Yes, that's why they are a shining example to how
Lagos State is the 5th largest economy in the continent of Africa,
yes,
senior to 49 countries.
Very true.
So, what is happening to the other states?
Now, the point I'm trying to make is, if we are able to cut that umbilical cord, because
why is the umbilical cord not holding Lagos?
Lagos State on its own has been able to diversify its economy. Its economy in the sense that its people are the most precious product, as it were, that Lagos State has. And because of that, they have been liberated to explore themselves through capitalism. Other states, they are laid back. Several states have solid minerals and they're not doing anything about it. And the reasons, one of the major reasons which I've also raised again, we have myriads of reasons. Our land law is a problem. The Minerals Act is a problem. So if the land itself has been taken by the federal government, you are merely a tenant on the land. And the federal government or the state government at any time can move you out of that land.
What are your expectations from the people and from the government, particularly 2022?
Well, 2022, I think we need to hold APC accountable, in my own view. Now,
if you are holding APC accountable, then who hold other governments, subnational governments that are not under APC accountable?
The ruling party, as it were, is APC. And what they were voted in based on...
Or rather, we should hold our government accountable.
Good. But you can say that, but APC is the leader right now. So we're going to hold them accountable because they made promises.
Okay.
They made promises when they were coming in. It's time for us to look at them. Look at their report card.
Your message to Nigerians and to the government.
Well,
as we look hopefully, our president said we should embrace hope and envision a better progress.
Yes, we will be hopeful because we will never give up hope. As Nigerians, we will never give up hope. This country will be
people, resilient people,
a great nation at the end of the day. But we must do our homework. But the elections is around the corner. We must pick leaders who are able to represent us and who have the interest of the people at heart.
Thank you very much, Barrister Ataguba Aboje, a legal practitioner, public notary, and an arbitrator. It's been wonderful having you on this show.
Thank you.
Nationalism and you. Nigerians, you've heard it. Don't lose hope. Our governors, what are you doing? Be creative. Create industries. Maximum productivity at your state levels so that we can create a robust society where our human capitals will be enhanced and the people can maintain their self-dignity, knowing that they can provide for themselves. Let us see how we can bake the cake and make it bigger so that our minimum wage can be better than this. And we should stop contending the payment of just the 30,000 minimum wage, which is not a good take-home pay. Thank you very much for keeping faith with us on Nationalism and You. I remain your host, Ebenezer Oyetekin. But do not change the channel because here on ITV, we care about you. We will continue to entertaining you, informing you, and keeping you abreast of national development. Thank you.